And now for a taste of things to come.
A great slam and then some. It's on!
It's time for the new GameOn podcast. We're celebrating our favorite games.
Falcon Punch!
Mamma mia!
Finish him!
It's a little bit of the old.
You're good, but I'm better.
A little bit of the new.
I am assuming direct control.
And everything in between.
But enough talk! How about you?
Let's get things started.
Get more from your gaming habit with Jeff Johnson.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
And we're back. It is the new GameOn podcast. I am Jeff Johnson, and we are back for Season 2. So let's fade that music out there. Let's talk a little bit about where we're at right now. I'm back from the woods, back from some summer camping, some summertime shenanigans, and back to doing my own thing, doing this podcast for you here. We had 15 great episodes for the first season. I kind of just abruptly ended the first season there because, to be honest with you, I just wanted to spend some time out for the summer. I had 2 kids who are going back to school this year that went back to school this month. And with everything that's going on in the world, COVID still being a thing. Yes, it's still being a thing. With that still going on, I just wanted to enjoy the rest of my summer, enjoy the start of the school year with my kids. So we're back to it. Here we are. It's the start of Season 2, and the good thing about taking a bit of a break from doing the podcast is I've actually had a bit of a buildup of games that I can talk to you about this week. So let's start by saying bunch of surprise announcements that we've seen over the last little bit. Super Mario 3D All-Stars got announced about a week ago, and, well, probably a little bit more than a week ago, a couple of weeks ago. And it's great to see that this collection has finally seen the light of day. A collection involving some of the best 3D Mario games from the N64, the GameCube, and the Wii. Missing Galaxy 2 for some reason, though. I don't understand that one, but that's beside the point. Anyway, that game got announced, and basically we were told that it was this limited edition thing. It was only going to be on sale for probably about 6 months, which that's nuts when you think about it, but hey, that's Nintendo. So that's been announced, and it's out there, and it's in my backlog again, because, well, that's a story I can tell you about in a little bit. In the meantime, I'm also going to be talking to you about another Mario game. We're going to be talking about Super Mario Odyssey for the Switch. Finally got a chance to play it. I've been watching my kids play it as well, and they're much further in it than I am. But I can tell you for sure that this is an absolutely incredible game, and I'm happy to finally get a chance to get my hands on it. Also, we're talking about some newer games that just came out this month. Nexomon Extinction, and you heard the Mon there. Yes, I seem to get into these Mon games a lot. I was playing Digimon on the podcast earlier. Pokemon was another one that I talked about. And now we got Nexomon. So I'm actually really surprised at how good this game is, and we'll be talking about that later in the episode. But just don't expect me to know all of the nearly 400 monster names off by heart on this one. That's a whole new world to deal with here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the last thing to talk about, RPG Maker is back in my hands. RPG Maker MV for the Switch. Recently got my hands on that one. And this is the pretty new addition to my collection that's sort of reignited that writing bug for me. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. In the meantime, I am Jeff Johnson. This is the new Game On podcast. And remember, if you want to listen to us, you can check us out on Spreaker. There's also Anchor with a variety of different podcast sites that you can go to there. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook.com/GameOnGNT. And there's also the GG app. I've got the link for that in this podcast description here, ggapp.io/GameOnJJ. So you'll be able to find all of my collection, all of the games that I've been playing lately through the GG app. So be sure to check that out. Once again, I'm Jeff Johnson. This is the new Game On podcast.
You know what they say, when life hands you lemons.
Do a barrel roll.
And when you want to know about your favorite games, listen to Game On with Jeff Johnson.
Hey, this is David Hayter. I'm the voice of Solid Snake. And you're watching Game On. So pay some damn attention.
The new Game On podcast continues. Here's Jeff.
New episode 16. Welcome to Season 2. I am Jeff Johnson, the host of the new Game On podcast, and we're going to start things off by talking about everybody's favorite plumber. Great games from the Mario series that deserve some time to talk about them. So right now we're talking about the Super Mario Odyssey game for the Switch and Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Now, obviously, if you're somebody who's owned a Switch, if you've owned an N64, a GameCube, or a Wii, you know all the games I'm talking about in this break, and this is not something that I really need to sort of toot the horn of here. Mario games are great. They are fantastic. Every single one of the games I'm listing here, Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy, Mario Odyssey, all of them are fantastic games, and me saying they're fantastic just adds to the number of people who are already saying the exact same thing. But I finally got a chance to get my hands on Mario Odyssey. I am amazed at just how well it is to pick up for both kids and for adults alike. Like, I basically sat down with it for one night and ran through 91 moons. Like, it is... I just tore through the first 2 levels of this game, just trying to gather up as many moons as I possibly could. And I've just been playing it sort of sporadically since, basically probably about a week or 2 now that I've been giving it a go. And it is great. It is really fun to see. My son, however, has been playing this game for a lot longer than I have, probably about 2 months or so, on and off, because, I mean, with our kids, we definitely limit screen time. Like, we try to limit it to about 1 or 2 hours a day at max. So with shows that they want to watch and different games that they want to play, it does make it tricky to sort of get in a solid game time and beat games quickly when that is your limits of the amount of time that you have. But he's been playing this game for about 2 months. My son Logan, he's 5 years old, and Mario Odyssey is the second game he's ever beaten. Second game, and I'm happy to see that this is the game that he decided to sort of latch on to, because he's been having a blast with it. Plus, the other thing I find with it is that Mario Odyssey is incredibly new gamer friendly and basically kid friendly. Simply because, yes, there is the Mario difficulty in there, you know, timing jumps and trying to get past certain obstacles that are pretty hard to get by in the 3D games, but there is no lives in this game. Like, the way it works is anytime you die, fall in a pit, get beaten by a monster, whatever, you just lose 10 coins and get back at her. There is no extra lives, no one-up mushrooms to be found. And in that regard, I remember when it first came out, I sort of questioned why they would do that. Why would they make things so simplistic like that? But it really streamlines the game. I mean, when you look at the older Nintendo games of Mario, I can remember plenty of times where I'd run out of lives, I'd have to hit that, in the case of the original Mario, you'd have to start over all the way from the beginning. In the case of Super Mario 3, you had to hit continue and beat through the levels you already played through, which sucks. I have to say that much. It sucks that you have to do that, but I just feel this is one of those things that is almost a necessity nowadays. Who cares about the extra life system? You don't need to have multiple lives to play through a game when all you have to do is put them back to a point where they were a little bit earlier and send them off on their way again to keep playing. And so in that regard, it's great to have that opportunity available for kids and newer gamers. Now, the other thing I'll say about this game, the bosses are really good. They are really solid bosses that are included in this. And that's one of those things that I've enjoyed seeing. Like, Graphics are fantastic. Everything about it is... Mario Odyssey is fantastic. That's pretty much all I need to do to sum this up. But let's get on to talking about the other 3D Mario games with Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Now, when this game came out as the announcement for a Switch collection, I thought to myself, finally. Because, I mean, we had Super Mario All-Stars back in the Super Nintendo, collecting all the Nintendo Mario games in one collection and introducing us to the Lost Levels. That was great. That was actually one of my favorite games to have for the Super Nintendo. It was a solid addition there, and just sort of collected all of those Super Mario games into one place. Yes, everybody doesn't like Super Mario Bros. 2, but everything about that collection just rounded out this great collection of games for people to play. Now, what we've got here is the 3D version of that. So, being able to go back to Mario 64 for the N64, being able to go back to Odyssey, and being able to go back to Galaxy for the Wii, I think something like this actually does a better service than that original All-Stars game. And the reason I say that is simply because of the fact that basically you don't have to go and dig out those 3 systems anymore if you want to play these games. Especially when you consider the fact that a game like Mario 64 is now 24 years old. So there's no guarantee that the system you have, the controller you have, or the game you have is going to work. And yeah, you've probably downloaded a version of Mario 64 over the years on another way of playing it. Like, I know that there was one on the 3DS, and obviously there's all the illegitimate ways of doing it. But to have the opportunity to sort of go back to that game without having to dig out all the old systems is great. It is great to have those available, especially since these are classic games that people who haven't been collecting for years probably never got a chance to be introduced to it. So, like, if I was to say, well, I guess the best example, if I look at my kids who are 3, 5, and 8, none of them would have been alive for any of these games being released. So, to have a game come out like this that collects all those old games together and puts them out there for people to play again, it just reintroduces it to a new generation. And that is always a good thing. It's like, you know, releasing the old Star Wars movies or the Disney movies so people can see them again. Now, when I bring up that, it also brings up sort of one of the detractors to this collection, the fact that it's only released for a short amount of times. Basically, Nintendo said you've got until, I think it was the end of March, that you could buy this game. And the thing about that is, well, for people who are sort of dilly-dallying and don't buy it right away, your chance to buy it probably isn't going to last that long. And to me, I guess it's not that big of a deal. Because the thing about it is, like, I was like, oh no, this game's out here. Oh, there it is in the eShop. I'll just, you know, have a look and see how it's going. I mean, you can download it on the eShop. You can buy it from the stores. I'm assuming that much of the game has sold out in most places. But at the same time, I don't know, because I haven't been to a physical store in a very long time. But the fact that it's available for 6 months constantly through the eShop, just download the thing. Yes, it is a little pricey, but so's every game for the Switch. Now, I've got a bit of a story for my download of this game. So, I sort of, accidentally bought Super Mario 3D All-Stars. And it sounds weird, I know, but bear with me on the explanation here. So the night before it came out, I was just curious about it. I'm a news person by trade. I'm curious about how things work a lot of the time. So I sit down, look at the eShop, check it out, and I was checking to see if pre-orders were still going. And I saw the game was there. So I go and I click on the game, and I click on the buttons to sort of click through to see where things will end up in the store. And I'm just curious to see how much it will cost when you add in the taxes and all that stuff. Because I figured it was just, you know, the pre-order system. Like, I just figured if I click through these buttons, I'll finally figure out what the actual price is. Well, I must have clicked once too many. Because all of a sudden it says, congratulations, you bought Super Mario 3D All-Stars. And I'm like, whoops, wasn't going for that. Yep, I own this game now. And it started downloading, and there it is, Super Mario 3D All-Stars on my Nintendo Switch. Now, the thing about it is, I was actually planning on getting this game as a gift for my kids at some point. Both my wife and I were thinking that, and here I did, just downloaded it immediately. So it's like, okay, that's a bit of a complication. So, as soon as I did that, and it's a good thing my kids don't actually listen to this podcast, but as soon as I did that, I go and click as many other games as I possibly can that I've already downloaded onto this system. Because then it would push 3D All-Stars off of the main menu. And I made sure the games that I clicked were games that the kids normally play. Because my kids will never go look for a game in that sort of side menu that, you list all of your different downloaded games on. They never do that. They basically just play whatever game shows up at the front because those are the games they like playing, whether it be Minecraft or this Nexomon game that we've been playing recently, or in Logan's case, Mario-Odyssey. So, they just click it and go. So, if my luck holds out, they will never know I've downloaded it, and I can still give it as a gift to them later. But we'll see what happens, because, let's face it, sometimes I plan and things go horribly wrong. So, we'll see how that goes. In any case, Odyssey, great game. If you haven't played it, play it. I'm adding it to my top 100 games of all time list. It's that good. It's fantastic. It's definitely worth playing. And as I said when I first did this top 100 games of all time list, I can't add a game to that list until I've actually played it. Well, I've played Odyssey, and yes, it deserves a place there. And you can find that list on my GG app, so be sure to check that out when you get a chance. I've got what I consider my top 100 games I've ever played, plus a couple of honorable mentions in there as well. So you'll find that on my GG. So anyway, that's it for this section. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a new game. We're not diving into the past for these ones. We're talking about Nexomon Extinction. I'm Jeff Johnson. This is the new GameOn podcast.
You're listening to Game On.
Tremble in fear at our 3 different kinds of ships.
Hi, this is John St. John, but you might know me better as the voice of Duke Nukem. And you're listening to Game On. Rock and roll.
You're listening to the new Game On podcast. Now back to the couch with Jeff Johnson.
And it's the new Game On podcast. I am Jeff Johnson. Thank you again for listening. And once again, you can find us all over social media. We've got our Facebook.com/GameOnGNT. Of course, there's our Twitter account. I post some random memes up there every now and then. And you can also find us on YouTube, on Anchor, on Spreaker, on a number of different places. Just, you can look for us and find us. You'll find us just by typing in GameOnGNT on any of those sources. So, right now, I'm talking about another Mon game. I've played Pokemon. I play the Digimon games. That Cyber Sleuth game took so much time. I couldn't believe that. But right now, I'm talking about Nexomon. So, Nexomon Extinction, I saw it pop up one day on the game store. And, on my eShop. And also on Twitter. I saw it in a couple of different places. And I'm wondering, what the heck is this game? So I clicked the video to watch it, and it's basically a Pokemon game. Like, Nexomon, the best way I can describe it is it's a Pokemon-like game. The word I've been using is, this game is a knockoff, but not a ripoff. So what you've got here is actually a really solid Pokemon-style game, where your goal is to go through the main story campaign here, and while you're going through this main story, you're also collecting different little Nexomons, or bigger Nexomons, depending on their size, and basically solving what's going on in this world. Because with a tag name Extinction, it's going to get pretty dark at times. So, basically what you've got here is you are this Nexomon tamer. I'm pretty sure that's the wording they used for it. I know it wasn't trainer, but you go through, there's these different tyrant monsters that exist, and there's also dragon monsters that exist, and the dragons were made specifically to fight against the tyrants. And so what you've got to do is go through the different missions that are presented to you, because this world is done in a guild style, almost like a Monster Hunter world style thing. And you actually have this little cat guy who accompanies around with you, like Monster Hunter style as well. So there's that. Trainers are all over the place, and they're the bane of my existence, because this game sort of does what Pokemon doesn't, and it lets you fight the trainers or tamers or whatever you want to call them over and over again. So like when you fight against them once, they will be inactive for a while, and then you'll walk by later and they'll be active again. So you have to keep fighting them. And there's been a couple of times where I've gone through an area and then needed to heal and went back to some place to heal and came back and that trainer was ready to fight again. And he's the whole reason that I went to heal in the first place. So you get sort of a pinch point where you get stuck sometimes trying to deal with these trainer fights that keep coming up. And really, if you're running into issue with one trainer fight, typically you realize that you've got to build your guys some more. And that's kind of one of the challenges I find with this game. Nexomon is not an easy game. I find Pokemon building, you can build your characters pretty easily, actually. It's actually not too hard to build up Pokemon in the Pokemon games. But in Nexomon, it's kind of difficult to do it simply because these battles seem to be a lot harder than what they are there. And not saying that that's a bad thing, because the game is pretty balanced if you're using different types and stuff like that. But the enemies are strong, and the enemies sort of scale and level with you as you go, just to make sure that you keep having a regular challenge. So, I mean, in that aspect, that is one of the things that are different about the game. The other thing is, you should be able to access most areas of the game right off the get-go when you start the game. So you could be wandering into areas that you probably shouldn't be in at the first place. But you're there, and you're collecting monsters anyway. So, what can I say about Nexomon? Like I said, this game is definitely a Pokemon knockoff, but it is not a ripoff. Like, I have not felt sort of cheapened out by buying this game. I've enjoyed every moment that I've played it. There are points where it is difficult, but you can get past that difficulty just by building your guys up. So, it's pretty solid. I would definitely recommend giving Nexomon a go. One thing I found interesting is right off the start, when you get to choose sort of your starter guy, your starter Pokemon that you choose, your starter Nexomon that you choose, you get about 9 different guys that you get to choose between. And in that regard, it's really neat because you can sort of take your own approach to how you're going to go through this game, much more different than what a Pokemon game is, because you always start with 3 guys, as opposed to 9 guys. The other thing about it is, there's really decent monster design. Some of them are weird, but I mean, in Pokemon it was the same thing. Not everybody's a champion. And there's a lot for me to still figure out with regards to the different rarities of these, of the Nexomon. Like, basically, there's uncommons, there's mega rares, there's ultra rares. It sounds like Yu-Gi-Oh cards in a way, but it's neat. It is a different take on the Pokemon game. It kind of reminds me of how Diamond and Pearl was, where Diamond and Pearl were sort of a more darker entry into the Pokemon games, but it is done in that sort of top-down style where you sort of walk around the area, and as opposed to the more newer Pokemon games, which are more vibrant and 3D, this goes back to sort of that sprite-based gaming, and it's good. If you're looking for something to get you through till the next sort of Pokemon thing comes out, because I have no idea when the next expansion for Pokemon Sword and Shield come out, Nexomon's a game to try. It would be fun for you to give it a go. Anyway, that's all I've got on Nexomon. Next up, we're going to be talking about another RPG, or rather, a creator of RPGs. RPG Maker MV is next on the show. I'm Jeff Johnson. You are listening to the new GameOn podcast.
This is Morbo, the newscaster. Today's forecast, doom, unless you're listening to Game On.
It's all about the game, and how you play it, all about control, if you can take it. Do you think that we could play another game? Maybe I could win this time. Time to play the game. Time to play the game. Time
listening to Game On with Jeff Johnson.
Game On, your new favorite podcast on today's drive to work.
Mamma mia!
We set high standards here. Here's Jeff.
And thank you once again for listening. I am Jeff Johnson. This is the new Game On podcast, episode 16, and the start of season 2. Thank you again for listening. So far, we've talked about Mario. We've talked about Nexomon. We're now going to be talking about something that I don't know if you can classify it as a game, but you can play it on game systems. So there's that. RPG Maker MV is the next game on our list here, and it's for the Nintendo Switch. You can also get it for the PlayStation 4, or you could have got it years ago for Steam. And what you've got here is a game that, well, the name's right there. You make RPGs. So you make characters, you make weapons and items, you make magic spells, you make monster encounters, you make different events that'll happen, you make the maps for everything, and it is a massive time suck. Like, this thing will eat your free time entirely. And I haven't dived into it too much, but I have picked it up. And most of my time so far has been spent sort of preparing and planning off game. So what we've got here, RPG Maker, I really got into RPG Maker way, way back. We're talking in my high school days, so we're talking easily 20 years ago. I picked up RPG Maker, the first one, for the PlayStation 1. And at that time, I had a lot more free time for writing, and was using RPG Maker as a writing tool. So basically what I would do is take my ideas for stories and hammer them out using RPG Maker. I'd sort of set up the areas that the characters were going to be in, set up as the different maps. I'd make the different characters that were in the stories, and then I'd sort of type out what all the characters would say in the given scene. Then I would take those scenes and write them out as full-fledged stories. And it worked. It was solid. I ended up finding that I was spending more time with the RPG Maker than the actual writing of the stories, but it was definitely a lot of fun to do. And I remember my brother and I both worked away on this really big project back then. We called it the New World. And to this day, it's one of those stories that I want to see be put onto paper. I want to see it become something more than it is right now, which is just, at this point, it's lingering files and ideas that have been tossed back and forth between the two of us. And I want to see this become a thing. I really want to see it become a thing. And RPG Maker MV has sort of reignited that writing spark for me. And so, once I got started with this and playing around with this system, I got thinking of what are the different things I could do with this. And so I broke out those old files. And I broke out basically printed out many of the different things I had already written, and have started putting them into order. Not only that, but I started pulling out all the other different stories I've worked on over the years. And yeah, writer Jeff is basically back at it. This is why it was sort of so late for me getting back into doing this podcast, because I've spent the last couple of weeks just sort of trying to get my notes together, get my stuff together, so I can start sort of hammering out one of these different games. And at some point, if all goes well with this, like, if I actually get a full game done with this, I would be happy to put this out and have you guys play it. So, that's sort of on my plate right now. There are a couple of things I find with RPG Maker MV I'm not enjoying. And I mean, this is just based on my original experience with RPG Maker for the PlayStation 1. Well, I mean, first off, it almost seems a little too complicated at times. Like when you're sort of working away with it and you're sort of planning out the different characters, you gotta sort of plan out sort of their proficiencies and their percentiles and stuff like that, like how much of a percentage they have of stopping certain attacks. And in that regard, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't see a point of doing that. But it's something I'm going to have to sit down and figure out as I go. And I'm sure there's more tutorials to work with on that. The mapping system, I'm trying to get used to the controls with it, because I found the controls with RPG Maker for PlayStation 1 almost a little more user-friendly than what this one is. That being said, I know you couldn't do the same system that RPG Maker 1 did with this one because it's just a lot bigger than what RPG Maker for the PlayStation 1 was. One thing I really do enjoy with this is that at this point, I don't know what the limit to the size is of the game that I'm making. And I remember with the original RPG Maker, I remember that you had to... It took up a lot of space on those memory cards because those memory cards weren't that big with storage anyways back on the PlayStation 1. And I remember I had about 5 memory cards dedicated to the RPG Maker game I was working on. So it got pretty big. It got pretty monstrous. And I'm hoping I can recreate that here. Other things I've noticed, some of the songs that were in the original RPG Maker aren't here. If there was a way that I could bring those songs over, I would love to do it, but I can only assume that, song rights disappear over the years, and obviously you can't use the same songs for each game. So in that regard, there's that. So it's not that much of an aspect that I can really work on. And when it comes to sort of customizing the different monsters in the game, basically colors are done with a color slider. And in that regard, it sort of takes away from it for me. Because, in the old RPG Maker, there was different palettes of colors that you could use for the different monsters in case you wanted to do a palette swap monster. And I've thought about doing that a couple of different times, and, well, the slider just doesn't seem to do it as well as what I would do with one of the older games. So, in that regard, there's still a lot of give or take here. I'm nowhere near done making an actual RPG with this. So, it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time to actually do that. And part of it is just I got to get used to the controls that are available for RPG Maker MV, especially on something like the Switch. So, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm sure I'll be talking about RPG Maker again on this podcast down the line. So keep that in mind. I will be talking RPGs. I've always been a fan of RPGs, and this is a chance to talk more about it. So that's where I'm at with this one. RPG Maker MV, it's looking good, so we'll see what comes from it. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining me, and we will be back next week for our next episode. I am Jeff Johnson. This is the new Game On podcast. And you've been listening to the new Game On podcast with Jeff Johnson. You can catch us on Facebook.com/GameOnGNT and, of course, Twitter for GameOnGNT regular posts. And also find us on YouTube and Anchor and Spreaker. I'm Jeff Johnson, and once again, thank you for listening.